Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So this category of people who are sitting here in this room today are different in terms of the challenges that they're facing, are different in terms of the resources they have, they're different in terms of the hunger, the ambition, the drive than the established firms, and therein lies the fundamental difference and the opportunity. When you look at these 5 categories of that I talked about, category 1 to 2, 3, 4, or 5, you will see that the resources are relatively lesser with each of these categories as we go down the line, but challenges are increasingly higher, and therefore this combination is, let me say, is in a unique land. Now, when we talk of capital first, which is what some of you asked me to speak about today, the story is not very different. I had worked at ICICI Bank from 2000 to 2010, and I'd worked at Citibank from 1990 to 2000. And all around this period, I had spent most of my time in doing consumer banking. We had set up maybe a large mortgage business, a large auto loan business, a large branch network of over 1,400 branches, and we had pretty much set up all these businesses. And I always used to say and tell myself that, look, if I had a firm of my own, which could be pretty much in this space, what a joy it would be. And one of the thoughts that I did come across at that point of time was that there was an existing non-banking finance company. I did a deal with the promoters that, can you give me 10% of this company and it'll get fixed, and I could fix it, and all of us could generate a lot of wealth. The idea was that you leave ICICI, take a stake here, go and raise, it was a listed company already, go and raise some QIP, raise some funds into the company, and then with that funds grow the company over a long period of time. Now, alas, as many of you told me and many of you have experienced over the last many years, things never work to plan, and that is pretty much part of the whole story. It didn't work to plan because very soon, within 5 or 6 months or about a year, the promoters announced that they wanted to sell the company or sell the stake in the company, albeit piecemeal, but they were otherwise graceful about it, but the idea was to sell. And when you are in a sell mode, then basically nobody subscribed to your QIP, because everybody is worried that what will happen to the company after I bring in the equity. So that idea pretty much flopped. Then we said, okay, let's go to some private equity players to whom this story can be sold. And that was a time then I approached Bain, I approached Blackstone, approached Carlyle, approached maybe about 10 private equity firms, one after the other. To every one of them, we were telling one story, that we will finance customers who the banking system do not finance today, which is finance the small entrepreneurs, finance maybe 1 crore of loan to entrepreneurs, maybe 50 lakhs, maybe 20 lakhs, maybe 10 lakhs, maybe 5 lakhs, maybe 20,000 rupees, maybe 50,000 rupees. But let's do such financing which the banking system does not do. So that was a core idea. Now, the idea as such is quite good. I still believe it's great, and I think it's a great opportunity. But pretty much there were a few other problems that came along the way, that the economy started stalling, the interest rates started rising, and GDP quarter after quarter was coming down from 9%, 8%, 7%, 6% over the next 3 or 4 years. And at that point of time, I think pretty much private equity firms were finding it difficult to take a position in a company, at least in a country where the rupee was constantly depreciating and the economy was not looking very good. So, but nevertheless, the fact is that we finally move ahead. As private equity firms always are, they take the necessary reps and warranties. But I came across a really phenomenal firm, just an absolutely professional to the core, a company called Warburg Pincus, who are based out of New York, to whom our ask was actually quite big. We had asked for close to about 800 crores of equity, which was quite big by 2011, 12, 13 standards. And because the newspapers those days were pretty much looking down the barrel, you were looking at magazine covers always talking about, I remember at least 5 magazine covers which we actually captured even in an annual report, which says, has India lost it? Then there was a banana peel slipping where India map was going off the cover. Then there was a full black cover of Outlook which said, blackout nation, power lost. So basically the environment is not looking very good. So in that environment, Warburg Pincus backed us with 800 crores. We made the many reps and warranties. We told them this is the plan, this is the picture we will build over the next few years. I am frankly delighted that someone like them came across and backed us. So issue was not the backing, because it was an existing running firm. there are existing lenders to you, and existing lenders get very paranoid when bad news appears in the newspapers or in the press and so, or on television and so on and so forth. So oftentimes they have a tendency to hold back the funding. Some guys actually come and say that, well, if you don't mind, don't use my money, use some other banker's money, and so on, and it becomes a pretty tough situation. Then finally, of course, even after we got the backing, we had a huge loop to carry through in the form of getting an FDI approval. I tell you, it was quite a path to take an FDI approval way back in 2014 or so. We needed approval from SEBI to get into an open offer. We needed SEBI approval from RBI for foreign exchange clearances. We need approval from RBI for NOC for inspection clearances. So India does need a lot of these clearances, but finally we did get by. So therefore, but one big firm makes a huge difference. From then on, which was about a 1,000 crore company in 2010, this company has now become a 12,000 crore loan book. It's now very profitable. It's posted last year over 115 crores of profit. So you can just see that that is a sort of impact that these firms can do. Now, when I step back and therefore communicate to this group of people who are now beginning to build the first $1 million, first $2-3 million firms, that this general sample of people I talk to, I get a sense. The issue is not really compare this with maybe a 4,000 crore market cap company with a 20 crore market cap company, but the fundamental principles are pretty much the same. I find that when these people we talk to, an extremely high level of commitment that we as entrepreneurs, as promoters have to demonstrate to the product or to the scheme or the plan or the business that we are asking them to back. And most often than not, people ask you to put your own money on the table, because I don't think anybody is there to just back you money without your skin in the game. It just never works that way. Because if you think of the counterparty's turn, which is probably the private equity firm or the angel investor whom you're asking for funding, chances are that they have their own concerns. They will have, if you are a risk manager on that committee, probably you'll say, I'm not sure of the market, I'm not sure of the Indian economy, I'm not sure of this, I'm not sure of the niche market, what about competition, what about funding, I'm not sure that you can sustain the level of kind of quality of employees you need to get. So the risks are many, and it's important for us to demonstrate that kind of confidence to say, these are the 20 risks probably that are there, but I'm behind this, and so that the lender or the private equity begins to feel that no matter what problems come along the way, this guy will stand by it or this lady will stand by it and deliver and make things happen. And I think that sort of a confidence to demonstrate to anybody from whom we seek equity or we seek funding becomes extremely important. The other thing is, when we think of businesses, I very often read that failure is a stepping stone to success. We often say, okay, unless you fail 2 times or 3 times, every failure is a learning, and therefore life moves on, and therefore we should become, and then that is the stepping stone to success. I mean, I'm not exactly denying the fundamental philosophy of that, but I can say that sometimes I find this truly facetious. In the sense that, frankly, if I lend to someone as a lender, because one of the key lines of business we do is lending, and if that person were to tell me, failure is part of success, man, I'll be pretty paranoid, right? I mean, I'm giving you money to be successful and pay me back. You can't say failure is part of life. Similarly, we cannot have an attitude to say failure is part of life. In fact, failure is probably a byproduct of this whole process, so don't get carried away into the cliches. I tell you that we have to make every attempt to say, I have to be successful, I can't fail. For example, when we were not getting private equity funding, we were not getting banking funding, we were not getting lines of credit, morning, evening, we would only scratch our head and say, where are we going to get the next bunch of cash? And where are we going to do it? And at no stage, frankly, when we were flying, we were meeting people, meeting at a party, I'd always be on the lookout for somebody who's a private equity guy. And if he was a private equity guy, take him around and talk and tell him the story, show him the spreadsheet, do all that work. Because luck, I do not think that we really get lucky. Lucky sometimes tends to give a feeling that, some God is sitting somewhere and he has bestowed luck on you. There's no such thing like luck. I feel it's chance probably. I do, of course, believe in serendipity. Of course, we keep looking, something serendipitous happened to us. But nobody gets lucky with life. It's positively It's probably a positive chance that happens to our life. And when we keep trying, some opportunity hits, an opportunity plus an opportunity plus a chance combines to make something happen. So therefore, I say no. We cannot just say that failure is part of life. No, we have to make every heaven and earth possible to make it a success. It's not just us. Maybe there are investors who backed us. Maybe there are employees who are at stake. Maybe our own jobs are at stake. For example, in my case, I could not just go back to ICICI Bank and say I made a mistake. Now, it's a huge ego issue that we deal with, because particularly when you're leaving at senior levels and then you fail, you can't find that job market is not that rich or available. Or you might not want to work with an organization with whom probably you didn't want to work maybe 3 years ago. The point therefore is that the stakes become very, very high and you just can't fail. The other thing is that, I do believe that in this generation we need aspiration, the feeling that I have to succeed, I have to win, I have to succeed. In fact, I do feel that, the people born, so to say, in the 60s, and I'm one of the late 60s guy, and maybe the 50s, 60s, we were all looking for a stable job, and if you got a job in the 90s, it was a big thing, and probably if you got a job in the private sector or in a multinational bank, you were just made for life. The people who were born in the 80s is probably what this group belongs to. You have energy, you have motivation, but the new generation born in the 2000s, really, that group has huge opportunities, but I really worry for the rich kids. I really do, because they wake up having everything from the time they were born. They have everything. So, in fact, when I sometimes meet, I met a bunch of college students the other day, and who are all between the 90s and the 20s, and I met them at a particular place, and I saw that they were relaxing. I said, man, so come on boys, let's get to work. And they said, no, we did this for 1 hour, we need a break. I said, damn, what break, man? This is not the time to take a break, right? I'm sure we can work for 8 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, because if you're really passionate for something, you have to go for it. There's no such thing like work, life, I need a break. I mean, I need a break sort of stuff. I can guarantee you that this is not the language that will be spoken by somebody who's breaking out through the glass ceiling for the first time in his life. He will never talk this language. But the rich kids who already achieved it, they are sitting pretty. I would therefore say that if there's any opportunity for us to inspire the next generation, not for their own thing, maybe they've had enough for their own lives, but for the nation as a whole. When you talk of entrepreneurs, we say we create wealth, and Anurag very correctly pointed out that, look, if you create wealth, what do we do and what are the opportunities with the wealth? I love people who spend, because somebody's spending is somebody else's income. So that's great. I even love people who save, because people who save keep the money in the bank account or somewhere, and the bank lends it ahead to somebody. I even love people who invest, because somebody who invests, then investment creates more growth. So it doesn't matter whether you save, whether you invest, or whether you spend the money, create it first. And therefore, when we say nation, as a nation we grow, when we say US is a nation of entrepreneurs, it is true that US is what it is today because they've grown at 2% per year for 200 years at a stretch to have a per capita income of $60,000 per income per person a year. So, and they have made it by entrepreneurship. They have not made it by socialism, they have not made it by communist philosophy, they have not made it by redistribution, they have not made it by any other way. They say to each their own in this country, each person can make the wealth. But what is a nation? It's just a landmass. It is the people who have made the nation. So if this nation were to have become a nation of entrepreneurs, which it is becoming, fortunately, thanks to all of you, and each were to create wealth, each were to spend, each were to save, each were to invest, that collectively is the nation. You take the personalities, we all die and go. Somebody else has the wealth and the roads and so on. But that's what makes the nation, and that's what makes the nation rich. So if there is one way India will regain its glory of the 1500s and the 1400s, when we claimed that we had 23% of the world GDP, it's one and only one route is entrepreneurship. And I think that each one of you will contribute to that success. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.